You're listening to SM Media.
Hi, folks, and welcome to our latest episode of the SM Media Horse Racing Show. I'm Scott McPike. It is a pleasure, as always, to be your host, and it is always a delight to be joined by one of the best minds in the game from the Scottish Daily Mail, Callum McCluckin.
Yeah, good day. Yeah, it's been quite a busy time of things with Royal Ascot. Been done and dusted, and we're into Goodwood and Galway territory, and all of a sudden it's like start of August. So yeah, it's quite busy. This week's quite relaxed, quite sociable. It's definitely two very kind of tricky idiosyncratic tracks to kind of deal with, and you do get a lot of hard luck stories there. It's quite quirky. So, and then it's a 5 day festival. Goodwood, it's 7 days at Galway, so it's definitely one to be quite selective with.
Yeah, before you know it, it's going to be the jump season starting. We're going to have the Grade 2, the Persian War. We're going to be at the jump season already. It's not long until it comes in. A few bits of news, obviously, before we get into kind of Galway and Goodwood. Obviously, we'll do a wee preview on both meetings that are coming up. A few bits of news. You did a very good post on the Mail on Sunday. We're recording this on Sunday. It's going to go out Monday about what's kind of been going on in kind of terms of this. This is kind of flew under the radar. Actually, it's been a story, but I don't think it's been covered kind of mainstream as much as it has until today. There's obviously been a bit of an issue between the bookmakers and race courses over the past couple of weeks in regards to obviously certain bookmakers not putting prices up for certain meetings. Now I know it's something you've covered. I will share it on social media and I'll put it on the kind
Hmm.
of column as well. Very, very informative piece. Just give us a wee description of what's kind of been happening and what you think the kind of issues are that's kind of leading to this sort of thing.
It's a big kind of problem that's potentially brewing here. Like racing's got quite a lot of them that are kind of coming together in a bit of a perfect storm. This is one about bookmakers' media streaming rights to certain racecourses now. It's Flutter who owns Sky Bet, Paddy Power, all that are in a bit of a tussle with Arena Racing Company, so Arc, which kind of run kind of Bath and things like that. But they haven't priced up three meetings the last 2 weeks. One at Chepstow, one at Lingfield, one at Bath, mainly because of poor prize money and not interest. And they're kind of complaining that the race courses aren't putting enough prize money in, and the bookmaker data is saying that like people aren't invested in this. It's costing us about two or three times more to actually stream this than we're actually getting money out of it. And warning signs of the big bookmakers are lining up saying that British racing for them isn't profitable anymore. Now you go back in the day, it's big bad bookmakers and yeah, it's a necessary evil and all that, but racing's failure to kind of acknowledge betting properly and its importance in funding the sport via the levy, it's kind of seen as maybe societally a little bit backward now, a bit of a dirty word, gambling. And racing's kind of tried to kind of bury itself away from kind of its dependency in betting, and it's there for all to see. If anyone that follows the gambling white paper, how much concern there is in the background about that. Um, but it's a bookmaker wrangle between Flutter and certain racecourses, and it's quite a handful. And they were going to put, they were threatening not to price it up at all. They've offered SP eventually and did it because there is a legal contract in 2027 with ARC to stream these things. That's been inflated via COVID and things like that. But basically, some big bookmakers like Flutter think racecourse companies like Arena are kind of taking the profits for themselves, not putting it back in the game. While you know, I mean, big bookies do the same, but they do pay kind of £350 million a year in sponsorship and directly in the levy directly into the game.
Mhm.
They're thinking, where's the money going? The racecourse now. There's no transparency over what racecourses get from media TV deals. Um, there's not much transparency about bookmaker profits either. But when the two lock horns like this, and the BHA and racing's authorities are pretty powerless over it all, to be honest. They don't have a lot of control.
What
It's
did you
always kind
think?
of,
What did you think about the comment Rafe Beckett made yesterday? And I'm not going to say what
yeah.
it was, but it wasn't. It wasn't a great look for the BHA if that's the view from trainers and people in the game. If that's what they're feeling about the body that are running this organize. Do you know what I mean? This organisation. It's not a great look.
Well, we're running it, but I mean, like Julie Harrington's leaving. There's about 6 or 7 of them that are leaving kind of at the same time of a government changeover in the year where they're going to just debate the white paper all over
Yeah.
again, and they have to, everyone's going to reform relationships with different people dealing with the same kind of issues. What the BHA are struggling to do is all these different factions are involved. I mean, there's so many different self-interest parties in racing that they can't really control much. When they did, they tried to kind of pull a general fixture list over, the introduct premierisation, and inevitably, and they try and do something, something's not going to like it. Whether it's jockeys, whether it's trainers, whether it's bookmakers, whether it's punters, there are so many kind of warring factions here. But this is a kind of a sign of like big bookies colliding with certain race courses, and 20 years ago, you'd think, oh, bookmakers need racing, racing need bookmakers. But I mean, the way the goalposts have shifted, I think this is kind of a sign of big bookmakers testing the water and saying, look, we are not as dependent on you as British racing is dependent on us.
Mm-hmm.
They've got all the kind of customer data. Flutter, for instance, take the separate company. They've moved their stock exchange listing from London to New York. Now when the British bookmakers are starting to close, starting to get restricted, the rug swung off to America as they open up.
And there's a
And
boom
that
in
is a
America as
far
well.
bigger market.
There's
It's
a
a
boom
far
in
bigger
America
market.
as well. Yeah, like you can see, like for UFC, for example, even things like professional wrestling. I mean, like DraftKings. There's a lot of bookmakers
There's
moving
so
to
many other
America, and there's
sports,
a lot of restrictions been lifted over there as well. And
in different states.
yeah, so
And it's a bigger market dealing with more people, and and you can't really compete with that. And if it's punters, I mean, bookmakers have got other things in the pies. I mean, they sponsor like a lot of popular sports sections, a lot of popular sports podcasts as well. They are innovating in a way that racing isn't.
mm-hmm.
And if you're reliant on one partner that's probably arguably maybe milk the game for all it's worth at the moment, there's nothing left. They can leave you behind and go, well, we've got a big casino wing, we can go over to America. You really can't do that. So if there's going to be a renegotiation on these media rights deals, then the bookmakers have a lot more power than you'd think in this instance. And I think racecourses have to watch out. I mean, if they maybe don't give them the olive branch that they suspect, then they might see the kind of rug pulled underneath their feet quite sharpish. So yeah, it's a little wrangle. It's a little war of words at the moment, but it could spiral into quite a big clash.
As the wider issue, and I'm just kind of looking at the cards for this week. Like I mentioned, we've got 2 big festivals, but we've also got, for a lack of a better term, a lot of dross going on. Like you have a lot of race courses who are obviously struggling to make profits. We get that, but like there's a lot of meetings and the quality just isn't there, and it's probably not like, obviously years ago it was different because you did have a lot of people would sit in a bookmakers, for example, and just bet all day. That isn't really happening now. And like tomorrow, for example, you've got 5 meetings, 2 all weather, 2 flat meetings, and obviously Galway. I'm not, although Ayr's a good example here. Ayr's obviously our local track. I'm kind of looking at Ayr's cards every week, and it's kind of mostly the same horses, and it does get repetitive and it does get boring.
It can do. I mean, I think that's kind of problem of retaining the audience that they're looking for. The other thing as well, I mean, bookmakers, I mean, they're not really actively trying to get people involved in betting and racing anymore. I mean, if they say it's unprofitable and they say that they're investing X amount, I mean, X amount of, let's be honest, a lot of the money that's lost is coming from punters, not indirectly via bookmakers, but it is losing punters money. Losing punters fund the sport. And if the bookmakers are paying over the odds to stream these races that they deem unworthy and unprofitable, then it's like the consumer. It's like, it's basic kind of economics. It's going to be passed on to the consumer. The punter will suffer, and you've seen that with like Piper and Sky Bet. I mean, you've seen all these kind of withdrawals of best odds guarantee. That's gone. You'd have to probably sponsor a market, and you have to go over a market probably religiously to get the price that you actually want now, or just lump it with SP. So it's very hard if you're not a 24/7 racing punter to actually just get on your horse at the right time.
Yeah.
Kind of thing anymore. All these extra places. I mean, this is a kind of sign of like the online racing golden era is gone. This kind of like wonderful free bets. About 5% of people will probably get them now. All these extra places, marvelous, but yeah, you're taking worse price than ever to get that. So it's a worrying sign when it's kind of mainly bookmaker downward trend. As for racing, I think you see. I think it's tied in with the gambling aspect of it as well. I mean, racing spectacle. You've got a lot of kind of low grade stuff that's happening at kind of the same time. I think people that go regularly don't mind that. I think they understand what's going to go, but there needs to be a lot more better marketing at the top level. I think quite a lot of people are on the same level about the BHA about how they've not kind of marketed things properly. You see how well you see bookmakers advertise things with their commercial wings. You don't see any of that kind of in mainstream racing coverage. You don't really see like vocal kind of adverts and things going out beyond really kind of word of mouth, to be honest, and racing level. And there needs to be kind of some sort of creative input to get people through the door, because it's still the second most spectator friendly sport in Britain. It's still well seen as kind of as a day out, but I would rather going into like Champions Full Gallop. But kind of, I know the first episode was about Hewitt. I've not seen it yet, but the first episode was about Hewitt, the King George. The second episode is about Sean Bowen and Harry Cobden. I mean, your average racing fan knows that. I mean, I think it'd be better if we actually see the difference between the haves and have-nots in this game. The have-nots that are going to air every week, scrapping away, fighting for 3-4 grand. Proper like groomers that are like working 24/7 to grind out a living here. We all know the glitzy stuff, and in a media landscape where it's so saturated with football and things like that, I just see these things as like racing leagues as vanity projects for the top, and I just don't see racing trying to compete with like Premier League football and things like that at the top mainstream cover. And I think it should be much more community based. You could actually champion low grade stuff like Air in the Week. This is a sport that runs every single day pretty much throughout the year. Second most community watched sport in the world. These racetracks, some of these racetracks were COVID centres at tough times. Look at all the high streets up down the country. They're absolutely gone. These community hubs going. This can be a commercial kind of aspect of things where a racecourse, for instance, like it holds like wedding fairs and job fairs and nights out and things like that, and it's a real boost to the economy. Stuff like that at community level, I think, where you could go to the government and say, look, this is what we actually can do outside racing and support it, and then get some grants that way, like community sports clubs are funded. When the high streets and city centres are beginning to die and racecourses might be struggling, but it's a massive wide open space that you can do a lot with. So I would rather see racecourses be a bit more individualistic in their approach in terms of engaging the community and getting people in, because you'd be there for a whole day. I mean, people like to say, oh, I'm not paying like £20 odd to watch like low grade stuff at Air on a Monday afternoon. Well, you are there for like, the gates are open to like 12:30 to 5:30. You're there for 5 hours. I mean, it's kind of a whole day out. It's a nice change of pace from like the hectic lifestyle and stuff. And if you look at the price, look at the prices of like top level sport. I mean, really open, but it's still like £100 a bomb ticket. You're getting ripped off left, right, and centre for these high class sport events. I don't really understand why racing tries to kind of constantly compete with that and dress up as like, not every Premier League game is brilliant. There's a lot of crap Monday night games that nil-nils between like Burnleys and Ipswiches and things like that, that nobody cares about. I mean, yeah, we kind of seem to kind of be too downtrodden on kind of the average stuff where it's average stuff that is there every day, and sometimes there's no problem with it being that. It's still the same product, still horses running around. It's still competitive. They're still trying to win. It's still okay. It's low grade stuff at here, but I've not really seen an odds on shot recently outside a maiden there at all. So it's competitive enough and it's interesting enough. And I just think, we try to bill up every single race every Saturday as if it's a World Cup final when it's just not. I mean, you can't accept that, not all sporting events have to be world class and world beaten. Sometimes, just being there as a spectator sport, I think it's all about getting people through the gates, being there, enjoying it. And if it's a bit marginally lower level stuff, then you can live with that, as long as it's priced accordingly and people accept it. So I just think lowering expectations a little bit would be no bad thing, and instead of like kind of viewing everything through, well, that's not that could be a bit better than it could be, but it isn't. Sometimes you have to accept it a bit better than we are.
Yeah, absolutely. But you obviously mentioned the new ITV documentary series. I think it is. It's a good show that they're obviously trying to. The likes of Full Swing, which I've watched and enjoyed, like Drive to Survive's done really well on Netflix. They're obviously trying to make racing's version of that. There's two episodes. Obviously, the first one you said was about Hewitt. The second was obviously about the Bowen Cobden jockeys race. The next one, I believe, is going to be about Cheltenham, which I'm quite looking forward to because the title of it is The Irish Are Coming. So that kind of tells you what the focus is on that. But overall, I mean, views look really good. I think it's over 1 million views in the first episode. I don't know what the second episode's done yet, but I do think there will be a drop off. Not too much, but it always happens with mainstream TV that it drops off after the first episode. Overall, though, in terms, you mentioned obviously about a mainstream audience. Like it will get people in to watch racing, but like you can make something look the best thing in the world with a documentary, but there's a difference. Like for example, I don't think you're going to see that. Like I don't think the average Joe is going to watch Full Gallop on a Friday and then tune into Market Raising on a Saturday, and this isn't the same sport. That's your issue. That's kind of what my fear with this is that it can look amazing. Like there's a reason we celebrate Royal Ascot Cheltenham because they are just miles ahead of what you usually see in a Saturday. Unless you've got a real Group 1 race or a thrilling weekend, it can look pretty bleak at times, but obviously they've done really well. I mean, the presentation of the whole kind of documentary, I think, looked really good. Like I think that's always really important is how they present it. But some good interviews as well. People you don't expect to be really good like interviewees, like Sean Bowen, for example. Shark's just shark, and I mean, you could talk to him the same way. Do you know what I mean? Like in front of 1,000 people as you would just him and you in a pub. But there's positives to take from this.
There are. I mean, there's absolutely no negatives in trying something new and getting like a million people to watch it. It's just whether it's going to transcend properly in the way I like. I think maybe it's because I work in the media all the time, sport, that sometimes I need a break, and that's kind of like extracurricular stuff. I mean, the thing with like Full Swing is that I know all the golf results and all the tournaments. Tennis, I know who's going to win. So I mean, I think that's the kind of thing that I struggle to see past in sports documentaries for me when you kind of. I know the result, but there are kind of great human interest stories in behind anyway, and of course horse-related stories as well. But I would just like to see it. I just fear that racing's it's this relentless quest to kind of find a brilliant story, one day for the other, or every week for another. When sometimes it's not there. And I thought Royal Ascot was really, really good this year, but you are competing with the European Championship that's on. Like Galway and Goodwood's competing with the Olympics. It's just not. It never will. It just won't get that amount of coverage right now. And sometimes you have to kind of accept that. Yeah, we've got a nice kind of mainstream audience where Champions Full Gallop is, and ITV's presence is key. But But yeah, I think it should be tapping more into kind of that squeezed middle, lower end of things, and use its kind of breadth. Like there's race courses absolutely dotted around the country. Just encourage, like, maybe, yeah, the quality might not be what it was or expected to, and the prize money might not be what it was and expected to. But if race courses offer the customer maybe a bone there, then that might encourage them to bet more. That might encourage bookies to kind of stay more involved as well. And but if all these kind of infighting parties, if they maybe take it down a notch collectively, then they can, and everyone can get through this pretty reasonably. I just think there's this kind of premierisation as well was kind of a start of that, where there's this kind of race to the top, and this is a Premier race day. Basically, to me, that says in a Saturday, this is worth watching, the rest isn't. Now, there's a clear graded system. There's Group 1s, Group 2s, Group 3s, into listed level, handicaps, Class 2s, Class 3s, Class 4s, Class 5s, Class 6s. People know what grade they're going to when they go and see racing before premierisation came in.
Mhm.
I mean, it was a rushed in kind of idea to kind of a desperate, and then it's put race courses into flux because some of them are losing their slots, some of them aren't, some of them moving about, and it was a far from ideal way to try and promote this and trim some fat here and there and everywhere. So yeah, it's just choppy waters times. I will try and watch Champions Full Gallop at some point for the stories in behind, but it's when you're kind of been working like all day and all week, and then you kind of have this free hour and go, I'd rather spend this in the form book rather than kind of seeing another kind of Harry Cobden interview, which are probably.
And it's maybe different though because we know
Yeah,
it, don't we?
exactly.
Yeah. Like,
But for the casual observer, then it's good stuff. The other thing is that mainstream TV might not have the kind of, when one of these things comes out again, it seems to be very important that it's either in like Netflix or Amazon, though, where it's like doesn't have like a kind of bit like the BBC where like it's license fee charge. It's kind of like something that young people don't kind of watch anymore.
and I
Kind of
think
watch
as well,
streaming service.
with Full Swing in particular, I watched it basically. I watched it my full day. Like all the episodes are available, so you watch it kind of maybe not a full day, but you
Yeah.
watch it repeat. You can't really do that with this. So
The other thing, another factor with this, and it's not just Champions Full Gallop with all this, is that you're supposed to watch the sport. The entertainment is the live sport.
yeah.
That's it for me. I mean, everything else is kind of a bit bonus and sometimes a bit, even particularly when you're betting on it, particularly inconsequential. I mean, in full swing when like Matt Fitzpatrick was going up. I was cursing because I was in Will Zalatoris. That was my main prominent memory. Now, if I can guarantee you, if I watch them all, the first episode was my favourite because I backed Hewitt winning the King George. That's the only thing I'll be thinking about.
Yeah.
When it comes to so that's how kind of punters, and that's how their self-interest works in that game. So that's why it's really difficult for racing to kind of have a kind of big togetherness approach, because even us punters have a little selfish attitude to things.
Yeah, absolutely. But we did obviously have the departure of a legend this week. We obviously saw the demise of Istabrack. I grew up on stories about Istabrack, obviously being the winning 3 champion hurdles, just this amazing hurdler that kind of catapulted like the likes of like JP McManus. That was his kind of first big superstar. Like, do you know what I mean? 32 years of age, cracking life, but just obviously like we never saw him in the flesh, we never saw him in his prime. But the stories I've heard is just this legendary figure in racing.
It's how these legacies can live on. I mean, I think when he's been astonishingly well treated. I mean, and that's testament to the training of Ian O'Brien as well and the care of the owners, because for a racehorse of his ilk to get to 32 and have this whole kind of base at Martinstown where he's like the centre of, and when he comes out with like a cake of carrots for every like birthday he has, he has a celebration. He hosts better parties than me. So that's for sure. Yeah, it does show how racing does care for its legends, and when a question's kind of had a bad welfare week with Charlotte Dujardin, take it for granted how well this game can be policed. the high level in terms of welfare. Istebrak getting to 32 was magical. He had the, I mean, I kind of flick back through some of his career. He did have a flat run at Ayr once.
He did, yeah. He
John
went
Rose.
off. He won the what we would now call the Ballymore at 7-2, and then went and won the champion hurdle the year after at 3-1. Imagine that now. That's never.
And he won the old Bogside Cup as well. Yeah, it was the big thing. The kind of big regret about Istebrak, of course, was the foot and mouth thing, where he could have been the first to win 4, and he probably would have. But when you kind of watch him back, it's a whole generation. Like, I mean, Jack Kenny said, like, he's a toddler. He just kept watching Istebrak and things like that. I mean, for Ireland in particular, there's a horse, GP McManus, a big horse that catapulted Aidan O'Brien into the stratosphere at a time where Irish racing was at jumps level, particularly pretty much on the floor. I mean, winners at Cheltenham there were pretty hard to come by. The late 90s, early 2000s. He started off. It's probably the inspiration for this kind of like controlling dynasty that we have right now in terms of jumps. But just when you watch him back, he was so quick. He always landed running, which was massively impressive. He was really quick. I mean, his rider Charlie Swan always said that his back legs almost went first because he was that quick. It's one of the best sights in sport is these horses that were 2 miles hurdles that are flying over them at 40 mile an hour and don't miss a beat repeatedly. It's a magnificent sight, and he was one of the undoubted best to do it. He'll always be remembered.
Yeah, absolutely. We are recording this obviously on Sunday. We had the big Group 1 yesterday at Ask. It was the King George VI and Queen Elizabeth Stakes. A bit of a turn up. French Raider Goliath won for a really good ride from Christophe Soumelon. I know he gets his faults, and rightly so, and he does get criticised, but I thought he was magnificent on here. There's obviously a lot to take away from this race, but overall, you'd put on Twitter that a couple of people were talking about Goliath, and looking at his performance, I think we did overlook him.
Yeah, the market did. I overlooked him for a shorter price from the Hardwick. He was second the Hardwick, and Middle Earth was third, and I thought Middle Earth was more unsuited to it than Goliath. He's just a French horse that's been overlooked. This race can deliver some funny results. With Pearl Driver, when he won it, it wasn't necessarily shock, but he won it. He won it in style as well. So it can exaggerate things a little bit. The pacemakers just went too hard, didn't they? I mean, Hans Andersen missed the break, and he was doing 10-second splits to get back up there, and over a mile and a half there. That's just not going to do. Aidan O'Brien playing the ground slightly.
What did you think of that? Because you don't see him getting upset very often, but you could tell there was something that
He wasn't happy about the ground and the inside. I mean, it must have been a very thin strip of ground because the time was 2 seconds quicker than standard. So maybe that kind of strip of ground that's been cut up slightly, maybe sanded down a little bit. Maybe it's a bit softer, and where they're drawn, they were kind of, team tactics were obvious. They had to kind of do it the way they did. I don't think it's a cast iron excuse. I think he's had every chance. I just think that they overdid it with the fractions. My opinion. He wasn't happy with maybe in Luxembourg lost 2 shoes, which does maybe it was a bit tacky inside for him. But he got the perfect split to the run of the race. I think he would get beat anyway, even if Goliath was it. I mean, I just think that Rebels Romance was right alongside him, and I do think with Gussie Rodan, I think when not everything's in his favour, I think he chucks it, and I think he kind of chucked it, and his head was kind of up and down, and he was, I'm not up for this. When Rebels Romance even went by, and even he was third, and they've overdone it so much that Blue Stockings came from last to second, who I would think would have liked it softer, and Goliath, whose trainer has said prefers it softer. So maybe the ground is a little bit funnier on the rounder track. The going stick, maybe they overwatered it. I mean, the going stick was 6.8 in the quickest King George winner. It's 2021. That year it was 8.1. So I mean, whether it's accurate going sticks and accurate going descriptions, but that's a thing that punters have moaned about for years. That's skewed form books. So to see a top trainer come out in a top race and moan about it kind of brought a smile to my face a little bit. But yeah, it's it's a funny race that can deliver up funny results, and it kind of did there. But I don't think it's a complete fluke. The thing is, he can't go to the Arc because he's a gelding Goliath, so it's a bit problematic for him. So he probably has to kind of go international kind of pot hunting selectively. But he showed versatility, and he was travelling all over them around the bend anyway. There was certainly no doubt who was going to win it anyway before Augusta Rodin went by Luxembourg. So yeah, even though it's formed to be treated with a little bit of caution, and it's maybe a little bit suspect the winner, I don't think it was a complete flick. He's at least ran to high one teens there, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. But we will get into what we're going to discuss over the next week. Obviously, we've got Galway and Goodwood. We'll start with Galway. Obviously, a couple of big races. In terms of the week, obviously, there will be some horses that will catch the eye. There always is. Anything you're hearing under the radar before we get into the plate and hurdle that to watch out for this week?
In Galway? Oh, not really. I mean, just to see what Willie Mullins runs, but Gotcha in the listed novices hurdle. I mean, he could be a decent stayer in time. It's a race he's kind of won with Penhill in the past. He might be one. Obviously, there's a good talk at the first race of the first meeting, but Mystical Power won. Cisco, direct recruit from France. He's obviously, he needs a watch. But I think he's opened up 11-8. So I mean, on debut, you just sit back and watch and see if he's going to be any good. Really, I mean that's how you do it. And there's these horses that teed up, so always runs at least twice around here, and he likes pretty well. So there are horses. It's a quirky track, so I mean C&D, same horses kind of come back for different tests that are worth noting. Like him, Dad's Lad, Maze Runner back in the day used to do it quite often. So and on the flat there, Dermot Weld usually unleashes one of his better ones at Galway. So it's stuff like that you'd keep a note of.
Yeah, and we've got the Galway Play on the 31st, which is Wednesday. Percival Lagawa is leading the market for Gavin Cromwell. You've got an Excelsis Deo. There's a couple of Mullins horses, Mr. Policeman, Am I Right, obviously there as well. You've got Authorised Art, Sanwa, Tullybeg. There's a few kind of good names in here. Usually kind of brings up, very often the hot, sounds daft, but the horse that looks the most well in usually does win. Mm-hmm. What do you fancy here?
Yeah, it goes to a classy, well-handicapped individual. The market here, I mean, the top two McManus runners are just obvious default favourite points, aren't they? I would prefer Percival Lagawa to NL6 Steel at the top of the market. I just think the quirks of Galway might find in Excelsis Deal out. He fell at Sandown where looked like winning, but he's kind of right-handed, and he's normally kind of conventional Cheltenham tracks left-handed. This is a little bit different, and he can sometimes be a bit too brash for his own good. I wonder if he might just get caught out around here. I think the versatility of Percival Lagawa at this kind of 2 mile, 6.5 trip, Punchestown, I think he's better right-handed as well. I think he needs to go right-handed. Punchestown was over a shade too short. This kind of when he was second, I think this kind of like slightly stiffer test up the hill. There's a bit of cut in the ground, I think, by Tuesday that'll still be there. I think that suits him pretty perfectly. So, I mean, out the top two, would have him. Mr. Policeman's a funny horse. I mean, you wouldn't have backed him at the start of the season at all for this, but he does have this kind of quiet, classy profile. The back classy that he has a reputation of.
This time last year, he was 8-1 for the Arkle.
Yeah, I know, and he's 10s for this, and off 149. Again, and he just gets in too close to his fences. Yeah. As for a novice, you'd think he'd learn, but going out in trip, he looks a bit better.
Think Townend will ride him?
The market suggests that he will. He's got the back class, he's got the right weight. Does he want better ground? I mean, I think he might be a bit of a muddlark. He might not like this. The trip might negate that, but in going right-handed, I think's maybe a bit of a plus. But he's just a hard one to kind of have maximum faith in. But he's a type that would kind of go and win this for Willie Mullins. I wasn't totally taken by anything else massively in behind. I thought Solness could run well up in trip. Kind of came back to back on track a little bit. Punchestown in May, and he's probably been put away for this. Joseph O'Brien, I think him at 2025s. You need a kind of young, improving horse that's definitely not shown his full hand. I don't think he has yet. So he was the outsider that I was drawn to, but it's very early days, and obviously you'd have to kind of wait to see what jockey bookings are anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. We've obviously getting Thursday as well, the Galway Hurdle. We've seen some good horses win this over the years, mainly trained by Willie Mullins. Obviously, Aramon, Zaret the Brave won it last year. Mullins has a really good record, and I think he's won 6 of the last 9. We have an English Raider, though, leading the market, and the weight this horse got was very eye-catching. 137 for under control. What do you think of that?
It's interesting. Again, it's just JP McManus top of the market. Yeah, it's obviously a workable mark for her. It's second in Doncaster. I mean, the likes of Foreman that's tied in with the likes of Gala Marceau and good horses of that grade. A layoff like that is a bit of a concern. There were plans to run at Cheltenham. I think the ground went too soft against her. She has had 2 win-ups.
You wouldn't have backed Nicky Henderson horses with stolen money then. So
yeah, exactly. That's another good point. They were obviously down south. They've got to kind of come back to form. Believe it has. She has had 2 win-ups. She's very boom or bust. She has this profile of she'll either win or not turn up.
Yeah.
It's what price you're willing to play at. 92 is probably borderline. If the GP pound comes in again, it's going to go off 3-1, isn't it? And that's probably enough of a green light to say she's okay. Fill your boots. 2 mile right-handed. She's versatile enough. I don't see any problem with the track trip. Even the ground, she has one soft. She beat Iberico Lord, who was good enough to run a champion huddle last year at Sandown. So there's a lot of upside to her at 137, at low weight. You just have to kind of wait and see what the market vibes are. And Nicky Henderson comes over here. It's usually pretty significant. Come over and did it with Epitaunt quite well. Sometimes it's just kind of same thing. When Daddy Longlegs dotted up at Ludlow, though, he looked like an obvious Galway hurdle horse. And there's a living that Patrick Mullins basically screamed those 2 words after they went over the line at Ludlow, saying, yeah, this could be a Galway hurdle horse. You didn't need to see that, but it went for a handicap at Punchestown. Before that, it was the easiest win of the whole meeting. 16-5 favourite, won by 5 lengths, hardtail on the bridle.
The biggest stinker a couple of weeks ago.
He ran an absolute shocker at Tipperary. He doesn't like going left-handed. That's my opinion.
Yeah, possibly.
His back work suggests that. He also doesn't like bad ground. On his best days, 150, he looks definitely well within his compass. He looked like the horse that I thought he was in his debut, where you think this guy could be a supreme player. But the ground went against him badly twice. He might not like being left-handed. There's probably shades of some temperament in there as well. But there's no doubt that he's talented. He seems to be his classiest horse in the race, and he's won this frequently with classy types. Salday won it. Zaret the Brave last year, it's either him or Tudor City, trained by Tony Martin, that win this over the last decade, really. So his profile, I think, was one of the more interesting Mullins entries. The other one, not Winterfog, I thought Bialystok was tentatively interesting as well. He ran quite well at Ayr second in the Scottish Champion Hurdle and backed him up quite quickly at Punchestown. But again, he was boxing on over the last. Looked like he was coming with kind of a winning run again and fell. And he had this kind of obvious float up at the Curragh on the flat to kind of maybe get him sharp for this 4 weeks ago. 140 is off a workable mark. Sometimes he doesn't put it all in. He needs to be delivered fast and late. So I wouldn't take short prices about him. But, at 16-1 is an each way shout here in the Rich Richie colours. He looks like a good handicap project. I don't think 140 is beyond him. It's only a pound higher than being second in the Scottish Champion Hurdle to Favour and Fortune, who I think is probably a very good Alan King horse.
Yeah.
It was tipped to run well in like county hurdles and things like that. Again, he's another quirky type. Another way is another kind of quirky youngsters, but those are the kind of profiles I'll be looking for.
Yeah, the one I quite like was Nürburgringer, Joseph O'Brien's. I think he does have some good, classy Grade 1 form. Like, I think he ran, go back and watch it, try and follow. I think he runs a really good race there. And he has followed it up, obviously, had a good run in third at Punchestown, obviously behind Kirgisi and the Cromwell horse that was well fancied. There's good form in there, and I don't think 139 is a bad weight. Like, I do think it is just a case of, is he experienced enough, has he learned enough to win a big field like this? I don't think he's run a field like this, to be honest. Like, I think that would be the big thing. But if you give me the kind of that price, if he's double figures, I think he's a really good each way bet. But that's a really, really tough race. Usually it is the classy horse that does prevail. Like Sharjah's won it in the past. Like Clondell Warriors won it. There's some horses in there who
plenty interest. I mean, outside Willie Mullins, that I was drawn to Nürburgring. He's also the flat tune up a couple of weeks ago at Leopardstown for this. I would want to see the rain come for him. I think he's a bit better on softer ground. The stiff finish at Galway will suit him, but he is a hardy juvenile. I think he will cope with it, and I think he's reasonably well priced at 10-1. Jesse Evans was runner up last year. I think that's too high in the weights now. Outsiders, I think in Dawie's he was third in the Boodles. I think decent ground, 2 mile I think that's what he's wanting of Gordon Elliott. He ran okay in 7th at Royal Ascot in the Queen Alexandra, where I didn't think he really would have any chance of getting home of that trip. He ran pretty well, maybe with a view to something like this off 134. I think he might get in of quite a low weight. So that's the Elliott horse that I quite like. And I still think there's a potential big pot in Newsroute as well. He might want a bit further, but he does want good ground and he does want a right-handed track. And he was another that ran midfield in Ascot. And that was an okay run where he definitely didn't get home, which suggests he's got pace to deal with this. And he was 5th in a good handicap at Punchestown Festival beforehand. And he's off an identical weight there. So they were two outsiders in Dawie and Newsroute outside of Willie Mullins' world.
All right, well, let's move into Goodwood. We're going to just get through the kind of Group 1 races and we'll talk about other kind of maybe fancies we have. Tuesday, obviously, it starts. The big race in the Tuesday is the Goodwood Cup. Kiprios, obviously, going for the double, obviously won at Royal Ascot. Thought did really well to win at Royal Ascot. He's 4-7 here. Kind of the same, mostly the same horses up against Coltrane, Gregory, Sweet William. Nothing in here I think is going to give him too much bother. I do think he'll win here.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's 47, isn't he? You know, he's a price where you wouldn't be ploughing in, but you wouldn't be laying either. You know, you just expect him to go do his thing, win by just more than a length. You know, he keeps himself to himself. Sometimes he'll keep enough up his sleeve. Trollerman isn't here, which is he was runner up to him at Royal Ascot, which we gave a decent shout to on the day. He was working well. He's not here, and I was disappointed with Coltrane at Royal Ascot. I was even more disappointed with Gregory at Royal Ascot. Thought Sweet William ran pretty well in third, and he could probably confirm the form with that for second. And yeah, I don't think there's much else to be said. Will Trushan run? He might take his chance this time, but I think he's had his day at listed level at Sandown when he was clearly the wrong price that day against far inferior opponents, and this track's probably a bit too sharp for him these days. So yeah, I mean, I think Kiprios will just win. Sweet William will kid on that he's travelling really well, and then off the bridle probably lose out. So yeah, I think Sweet Williams. I think the market's bang on really. I think Sweet Williams shades Coltrane for me for second favouritism.
Yeah, and then on obviously on Tuesday as well, the Vintage Stakes, the Parthenon is 2-1 to win there. The 2-year-old race, I haven't really seen I wouldn't say he's anywhere near the best in the Brian 2-year-olds we've seen, but again, probably 2-1 looks a bit short for me here based on what he's done. And then obviously you've got Kinross and the Lennox Stakes at 3 o'clock, 5-2. He'll just be favourite for every single race he runs in. Very much a boomer bust horse, isn't he? He can either he can either look really good in defeat or just bomb out completely, and that's kind of been the story of his year, really.
Yeah, I mean, the Lennox, Newmarket, I think when he bombed out, it was forgivable because he doesn't want a sharp 6 furlong quick ground, like that. So he kind of backed out of that. Newcastle, it was a big reappearance run, which was supposed to be Royal Ascot, but it was too quick for him anyway, so he didn't need to go there. And he was a decent second there, like 6 furlongs too short. This is his trip. This is what he wants. It's just whether he's just catching up a little bit. 7. He wins this race pretty regularly. He won it last year in quick ground, beat Audience by half a length. The Audience has won a lock-in since. He ran all right on 5th in the Queen Anne, where it was completely different ridden. I don't understand why he's 8-1 and Kinross is 11-4, particularly when he's got a better draw to attack. So I think each way, I think he's actually quite interesting as a Lockins winner. Plenty of pace on Pogo, Art Power. A strongly run 7, and him in behind. I can see Audience probably running pretty well there. Noble Dynasty's got the form to play a part. English Oak absolutely sluiced up in a Royal Ascot handicap and looks ready for this grade. Although was beaten 2 lengths by Noble Dynasty early in the year at Newmarket, so he's got a bit of work to do against a Godolphin runner. I think this is a Lennox with a bit of depth. The Audience has got a £5 penalty for winning the Lockins as well, but it's kind of merited in ratings because he has £5 clear of the rest of them now. So I think he's a shade over. I've not got a concrete opinion on that race, but I think he's a shade overpriced. I would rather back a Moray City over the Parnanthian in the vintage. I mean, he's won at Gowran Park, by 3/4 of a length. Pretty workmanlike, green, carries head, ugly. I think Amore City ran pretty well at Newmarket, where behind Whistle Jacket, who probably is Ian O'Brien's best 2-year-old colt, in 2.5 lengths. And he just got outpaced. He just needed 7 furlongs, and the step up and trip, I think, is absolutely ideal. I think Jill Appleby's colts at 2-year-old level are better than his fillies, and I think him at 4s is perfectly reasonable enough. I'd also like to see Electrolyte bounce back. He needs 7 as well now, so after his Air Maiden and Coventry second, I think he can maybe run better than he did the last day at Newmarket, where he also shaped as if he needed further. So, and the Balding runner's interesting, the Hannon running's always interesting. They're big yards that merit respect. So again, I think those 2 races in the open day, plus the Goodwood Cup, seem to have a reasonable shape to it.
Yeah, and obviously on Wednesday as well, we've got the Sussex Stakes. Rosalian, I think, 5-6, very, very good. Has beaten obviously Henry Longfellow. Looks the standout 3-year-old that isn't named City of Troy. Rosalian 5-6 here, good thing.
Yeah, it's a deep race. Yeah, I mean they're taking elders on this time as well. I mean, Factor Cheval was well fancied at Royal Ascot at Queen Anne, but followed Big Rock with that brainless decision to go up the middle when everyone else, went the same side. I mean, I don't know what the French were thinking that day, but that was a mistake, and he could bounce back. Maljoum comes and represents Queen Anne form from the elders as well. So I mean, there is different angles to kind of take him on with. Notable Speech was disappointing in the St James's Palace. He did win the Guineas beforehand. What he needs, though, is a strong pace, being held up from the back. That didn't pan out at all in the St James's Palace. Is he going to get that scenario here? I don't know. It depends on his draw. I mean, Henry Longfellow might run quite well here. I think he might want a bit further, but I thought he did quite well to kind of dictated, and Rosalian was probably value for more than his neck victory, but to get within a neck and ground that he would have not liked as much as the eventual winner was a good effort. I think it'll be a very good duel. I think it's priced about correctly, and I'm not wagering anything till I see probably see the draw. If Henry Longfellow's drawn inside and he can attack and you can hit traffic good, we've seen many renewals here where it's just a complete kind of shock, and it just turns out tactics on the day. So that could happen there. But I mean, on initial prices, we don't know. It seems fair enough.
On to Thursday, we've got the Nassau Stakes, and I think this could be the race of the week. Opera Singer, obviously, has looked very good in defeat both times. She just looks as if she's screaming out for a step up and trip. She is 6-4. Emily Upjohn 2-1. Obviously, looking very much in the road that she needs a win as well, just to kind of justify her. And Spiral's there as well. Looks a race between the top two. Opera Singer to me just looks tailor made for this trip.
Not convinced by her. I was disappointed by her a little bit behind Port Opportunity, who is frank the form anyway, but she will improve for going up and trip. She just gets beat more often than a profile should suggest at the moment, shouldn't it? I mean, what's... I don't think she should be favourite. It's not done enough. Emily Upjohn coming here, bit to prove. Needs to settle down a little bit. In Spiral, even more to prove probably. I can't believe that there's a Guineas winner here that's 14-1 in a Malka.
Yeah,
it's a ridiculous price. If you think Opera Singer needs a step up and trip, she certainly did win fourth in the Coronation.
Yeah.
Absolutely flew home. Won the Guineas, she needed further there. Probably doesn't want this kind of rain to come, but I think because their connections aren't Ian O'Brien connections, I think 13-8 against 14-1 is just wrong.
You're going well, Malka.
I think you have to roll in with her each way.
Yeah.
I think you don't know what you're going to expect from either Inspiral or Emily Upjohn. I mean, Inspiral to be priced as if she's not going to be honest, 71. You know, not joked up. Didn't really get home either. When up to 1 mile 2, I know this is an easier track, but and she missed the break. But there's enough doubts about her now in her 2 runs this season. Emily Upjohn ran well. The Curragh, I think she would probably like this kind of potential cut in the ground for this. An Opera Singer, yeah, that this might be the day where she does live up to her promise slightly as 3-year-old. But I think at the prices, if we're just looking at raw form this season, at the prices, I think El Malka is too big at 14s. I think she could come fast and late, and she does look nippy enough, and she definitely wants 10 furlongs. With the Opera Singer, you know, she's shaping as if she does. Pedigree, there are kind of mixed messages about her. She's flat to deceive twice this season for me.
On to Friday, we have quite a good rematch, actually. We've got Alfura against Big Evs. There's a few up-and-comers coming into this race as well. We've got likes of Believin'. I think Starloss is a very good chance in here at 11-2. Obviously, the fastest race. As Fura, was it a fluke, or is Big Evs somebody you think can bounce back?
I think it was a fluke. I mean, I just think she was trained for Royal Ascot properly in mind, and it was an obvious float up at here beforehand, and back to quick ground to 5 furlongs. You know, that was a big day for the foreign raider, and they've kept her here for this. She's definitely not the best sprinter in Australia, though, not the best top 5. And, you know, I think a quicker, sharper track here, I think Big Evs is the one to be with.
Okay.
I didn't give him much of a chance at Ascot, to be honest, and he still went off favourite. I thought he ran really well. He got to the front too soon at natural speed, and he just ran out of puff and lost second in the line to regional. Asfura was always holding him that day, but he's still getting these 3-year-old weight concessions. This track is far more suitable, can handle any ground. This is all about pace. Yeah, and I think he's the one for me at that price at the ratings. I respect Starlust back to McYacht the last day where he bounced back. He must have a chance as an each way player, just so being supplemented his interest as well. So again, I'm just kind of hoping for a 3-year-old to kind of do something worthwhile in the sprinting division, because it desperately needs
a star, yeah.
a decent shake up. Living the dreams in there, so it's going to be very fast and frantic. Democracy Dilemma goes forward. If he turns up, might go for a handicap. Anyway, so yeah, there's going to be plenty of pace on, but if it's full on and quick as that, and Big Ev's got something to aim at, then I think he's going to be. I think this is his ideal optimum sprinting conditions, and I think he might be hard to stop here.
On to Saturday, a couple of races. We've got Lily Langtry at 3 o'clock on Saturday. Obviously, free win, who I don't think was bad against Blue. The Blue Stocking was just a freak that day and beat her 6 lengths. I think that was quite a good reappearance run. She's 3-1 here. Obviously, there's some kind of old timers in here as well. You've got obviously the one that really jumps out to me is Queen of the Pride for the Gosdens. I think was really good at Haydock. I think she could beat free win here.
Yeah, she's progressive. Yeah, and each wee player maybe doesn't want it to rain. There's a bad habit of Saturdays at Goodwood the last few years. There's just been absolute downpours, and it's a bottomless mess. Free win, yeah, it was for Galway. It was clearly her wrong trip, wasn't it? 1 mile 2 is not good. She needs to be at least 1 mile 4.
Ran credible though. I think it was a decent run. Just as you say, kind of things went wrong. I'll take that as a positive run.
But she ran fine. I mean, it's just blatantly a trip that's far too short for her. Just outpaced. There was certainly nothing wrong with it. She's definitely not on a downgrade. Case Chorister coming here from pitching too high and staying company from a yard that quite like it like this. She could sap the stamina out of them if it does rain. So she would have to be interesting. Time Lock, I think, is a bit fragile. The rest have a bit of work to do, but it's a fillies race where something could spring up. I'm quite tempted by Case Chorister. I don't think free wins one where you could have massive faith in it. I wouldn't be concerned with the York run, but I mean, Ascot, where she had pretty much everything in her favour, was a bit disappointing. She was beaten pretty similarly by Blue Stocking that day in Champions Day. The arc was obviously too tough. This race should be more up her alley, but yeah, I think there's more upside to Queen of the Pride, and if it gets attritional and soft ground, Case Chorister's a big danger.
Finally, before we wrap up, Callum, can you pick the winner in the lottery that is the Stewards Cup? If you pick this, then
no.
6-1 the field. It's always one of the toughest races of the season. Going to put one up at a price who I think might run well for William Knight, Holcombe Bay. Won at York last time out. It was a pretty similar handicap, couple of similar horses. Brandon Wilk obviously claiming 5 that day. Just kept on, just switched right at the right time. I think £25 is quite a big price on this. I do think, though, this is an absolute shambles. You could pick anything in here and you'll have a chance. But overall, I think it's going to be a good week. I do think Goodwood, obviously, it's quite difficult to assess because there's not as many Group 1 races, not as many stars on show, but it's always competitive. There's always good action. This week's going to be fun, Callum. Thank you very much, as always, for joining me. Before we wrap up, what would you say? What's the one horse you're going to back in this week at Goodwood or Galway?
I really like Big Evs in the sprint. I really do. The only tuppence worth of having the Stewards Cup is that you probably know a track bias by then, so I don't think the middle's much use. But I think the horses I've got an eye on won't get in. So I'm definitely going to leave that to the. I like most of them. To the day for sure, but I like the makeup of the first day. I think the entries are holding up reasonably okay, so I think it's going to be a good week. And then the way it dovetails is normally you've got Goodwood and then it just rolls into Galway, so it's just there constantly. If Olympic sport isn't your bag and racing is, then you know what to do this week.
Yeah, absolutely. We will probably be back. Probably next time will be St Leger, I would imagine. Maybe if there's something before that, we'll look in. But Callum, pleasure as always, mate. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks again. You've got York, Ebor after this, and then Doncaster, St Leger, your Gold Cup, things like that, and then you are properly into jumps land.
We are, and that's the beauty of the jump racing scene. We'll be back for that as well. Thank you very much, everyone that's tuned in. Subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels. As always, follow us on social media. Thanks very much.